Music to the noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine Pun Kelly get caught in the fray. Facts and logic with a twist of chest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. You propose the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity where they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Machine Pun Kelly with the set of clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts glow.
Hey there, how you doing? Happy January 7th or 8th or whatever it is. January 8th. Wow. We're already out the way to We're a week into the year. And it already seems like a worse year than last year. Hey, Kitty. Hi, Skippy. Hi, RJ, if you're still here. Are you still here, Skippy? Let me know if you're still here. Let me see. I forgot to, I'm just gonna make sure I got the Pat Robertson dashboard ready to go. So how's everybody doing today? How are you doing, Kitty? Buchanan. Okay. So once I hear from Skippy again, I'll go ahead. I can start. Uh-oh, I'm sorry you're upset. Are you upset about the ice thing? So I don't blame you. There's a lot to be upset about. Oh, she got her first real newsletter out today. Am I on your list? I hope I'm on your list. If not, I need to sign up. Let me go ahead before we start into everything else. This has been going around a little bit. And I know I'll get to the... So this is the DOJ rules of engagement. And I know that some people are saying, well, the DOJ and the DHS are different, but I'll show you what the DHS one is substantively the same on the use of deadly force. Deadly force, this is just whatever you think about whether or not the officer was acting in self-defense is rendered entirely moot by actual DOJ policy and Department of Homeland Security policy on the use of deadly force. It says deadly force may not be used to solely prevent the escape of a fleeing suspect. Firearms may not be discharged solely to disable moving vehicles. Specifically, firearms may not be discharged at a moving vehicle unless a person in the vehicle is threatening the officer or another person with deadly force by means other than the vehicle. So the vehicle itself being the weapon is not sufficient reason to kill the person in the vehicle. The other thing, the vehicle is operated in a manner that threatens to cause death or serious physical harm to the officer or others, and no other objectively reasonable means of defense appear to exist, which includes moving out of the path of the vehicle. Now we know that moving out of the path of the vehicle was an alternative for him since A, he moved into the path of the vehicle in the first place, and B, he moved out of the path of the vehicle as he was murdering her. So some people will say that's DOJ policy and not DHS policy, but DHS policy says effectively the same thing. When a person in the vehicle is using or imminently threatening deadly force by means other than the vehicle, again, other than the vehicle does not count. And when the vehicle itself is being operated in a manner that poses an imminent threat and no other objectively reasonable defensive option exists. So if there's no other option and they're doing it, but explicitly including moving out of the path of the vehicle. So if you can like get out of the way of the vehicle, when he got out of the way of the vehicle, then use of lethal force is not authorized by DOJ or by the DHS. So either way, even if you were to accept, and I don't, that she was trying to kill him, that she was trying to run him over, but even if you were to take the DOJ and Trump and everybody at their word, based on Department of Homeland Security policy, what he did was not authorized use of force. So, oh boy, spitting out. I don't know what lies I'm spitting out there, RJS. I am just reading to you what actual DHS policy and DOJ policy is. The ICE agent should be held accountable for this heinous act. And I think he should be. Like, anybody that, like, there's just no justification for it at all. And it's sad. It's sad. This woman, she had a son. He's 6 years old. His father was an Air Force veteran who died 2 years ago. Her wife, I guess she's maybe bi or something. Anyway, she had a husband. Now she has a wife or a partner, and she was in the car with her. I was thinking about you when I saw this yesterday, Kitty, and she the wife was in the car with her when she was shot, and then they had video of her just on the ground, just crying, and it was so sad because these are, like you were saying, these are people. They have a child, they have a wife, they have human connections. The mother was talking about how she's gonna come up and get the son. The guy moved over to the side of the and like I agree with all of that. Like when you look at it, and he was like fired the second and third bullets into the side and back of her head, where it's clearly impossible that she was trying to hit him with the car at that point. As like a former head of Homeland Security pointed out too, if it was so obvious that his life was in danger, why didn't the other two officers reach for their guns? Like there's all kinds of things that, show his life wasn't in danger. But even if, she were trying to hit him, none of that would even matter because he could have moved out of the way of the vehicle, which we know because he did move out of the way of the vehicle. And if he can move out of the way of the vehicle, then that's all he should do. Like the only way he is authorized to shoot her is if she would have killed him with the vehicle if he didn't shoot her. And we know that's not the case because he's fine. He's fine. We get all kinds of like people sitting there breaking down the video and stuff, and they're showing videos of like where the car struck him, and it's like he's like leaning into the car as though the way physics works is that he would be like slung into the car instead of away from the car. Why is the weight of his body going towards the car if he's being struck by the car and sent backwards? Why didn't he fall over? Why is it that the witness testimony says that he threw himself on the hood of the car so that he could shoot her? But even if you discount all of that, and even if only you look at and all you see is, she was trying to hit him with a car, that is not sufficient. That is not sufficient. If he could move out of the way, and he did move out of the way, he is not authorized to use lethal force. Period. End of story. And you can say FO all you want, and we can definitely say that about Ashley Babbitt, but she didn't FA and FO. There was another witness that actually volunteered to come on MSNBC with Chris Hayes last night because she lived upstairs. She was like right there. And there were a bunch of other ICE officers before the video started telling her to move her car. And so she was like waving, you can see her like waving them past so that she could pull out and drive away the way that she was trying to follow ICE officers' instructions. And then these other idiots stop the car, they get in the way. They were the ones actually blocking traffic. They're the ones that parked their car in the middle of the street. They were blocking traffic. She wasn't. She was trying to wave them past. So she was trying to follow ICE instructions. She didn't FA and FO. That was just a guy murdering her. And you're sitting there gloating about it. What would you have done? I would have moved out of the way. One, I would have moved out of the way. Like, that is what you're supposed to do. Number two, I wouldn't have gotten in front of the car either. Again, this is policy. This is what they are supposed to be trained to do, Jim. This is what the policy says. It says, when the vehicle itself is being operated in a manner that poses an imminent threat and no other objectively reasonable defensive option exists, explicitly including moving out of the path of the vehicle. If you can move out of the path of the vehicle, that is what you should do. So what would I have done? I would have moved out of the path of the vehicle. I would have done what the law requires. I have no idea how you know that or where you're getting that from or what the relevance is. She was following instructions. And again, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. It's absolutely irrelevant. You're not allowed to murder somebody for not following instructions. No, I did not. Awesome. Was it a tweet you made or something? Or a post on the topic? Huh? Awesome. What was it in reference to? I was looking at some of the comments from Fox, and someone stated she was a liberal who cares, and that's grounds to murder somebody from this group. I've been crying off and on. I've had a really hard time with it too, Kitty. I don't know if you know if I've mentioned this before, but I have two brothers that live in Minnesota. Both of I've got a lot of, like, both of my brothers, their children, some are adults now, and they're my sisters-in-laws are friends of mine, and then one of their siblings are also friends of mine, and I have a lot of friends still there from when I used to live there. And I was looking it up yesterday. Here, I'll see if I can find this, because this is just really sad. I'll see if I can find this this little screen cap I made yesterday. Is this it? So this is where the shooting happened. And this is where George Floyd was killed. So just less than a mile away, just a 3-minute drive, maybe a 10-minute walk. And it's just, that community has been through too much. It doesn't need to go through this again. And you've got ICE up there behaving the way they're behaving. Yeah, JD Vance is an asshole. That's all. I can't even, I had to just mute the TV. Cordova versus Aragon, the U.S. Court of Appeals for 10th Circuit held that where a police officer had moved out of the way of an oncoming ability, the use of force was not justified. Good, because that they like speaking of JD asshole, he was talking about how this officer had absolute immunity, which is a thing they just made up. He has qualified immunity. Qualified immunity means that if that you know, like, if somebody's been able to get away with it before, you get away with it now, basically. So that somebody has been convicted of this before and it was an illegal excuse already means he does not even have qualified immunity, much less absolute immunity. And I hope he rots in jail where he should be. Maybe he can get a cell next to the George Floyd murderer. As I told you several times, RJ, you've been here. What she did is completely irrelevant at this point. Whether or not she was trying to hit him, all of that is irrelevant. He could have gotten out of the situation without dying and without killing her, and therefore he murdered her. Like, this is the part that goes with being the so-called trained officer. And I'm not going to get into the rest of it because clearly your mind does not absorb that a 5,000-pound vehicle is going to push a 200-pound police officer away, not into the thing. He threw himself at the vehicle, but that's still irrelevant. He stepped in front of the vehicle when he could have been stepping away from the vehicle. He could have been stepping away from the vehicle instead of drawing his gun. He was still able to avoid the most contact with the vehicle. He could have gotten out of the way, which, according to the Department of Homeland Security's actual policy, is what he should have done. So everything else is just you excusing murder. Yeah, there was a Times screenshot that showed even before she put the car in drive, he was already starting to pull his weapon. He was trying to comply with law enforcement, but not complying with law enforcement is not grounds for lethal force. Can you accept that? Like, complying, you can't just like go murdering people because they didn't comply with law enforcement. I don't know what you're saying is wrong. I mean, like, there's the DOJ policy, there's the DHS policy. That's not wrong. That's just something you don't want to hear, maybe. Another white leftist loser. Yep, see, that's where we get to the name calling. You always know you've lost the argument when the MAGAs start name calling. She was an American citizen, Lou Weaver. Are you sure it was? I don't even know if he's been identified yet. So there was a separate person, or at least there was a separate incident where somebody emptied a gun into a woman and said that she was trying to ram the vehicle, and then video came out that showed she was actually the one who was rammed. Again, no matter how many times you watch the video, it doesn't change the facts that he could have gotten out of the way, Jim. And the policy, and we know he could have gotten out of the way because he did get out of the way. Policy states if you can get out of the way without killing the person, get out of the way without killing the person. That's what your opinion on everything else is irrelevant. I'm talking about the Department of Homeland Security policy. Like, if you want to talk about enforcing the laws and following laws, and the whole thing about the immigration raids is allegedly about following the laws, then you have to be for enforcing the laws and following the laws. If we can't trust the people that enforce the laws to follow the laws, then we have no laws. There is no way South Park can compete with reality. I am no federal agent. Never said I was. But I know what federal policy is because it's online. No, she wasn't. She had a gun trained on her head and was scared the wheel was turned so far away from. Yeah, and I agree that I think she absolutely was not at all trying to kill the officer. But whether she was or not, at like once I saw this, I just realized everything else is moot at this point. It doesn't matter because he did not have to kill her. We've successfully made this about her and not him. He's the one that shot her. What we're talking about right now is the officer, the ICE officer. Was the ICE officer justified in shooting her? And according to Department of Homeland Security policy, if he could take another defensive action, such as moving out of the way of the vehicle, then lethal force is not authorized. He could move out of the way because he did move out of the way. So we know he moved out of the way. Therefore, lethal force was not authorized. It's not about her. We need to stop making it about her. It was about him. He's the one that killed her, and he was not authorized to kill her. And that's why I think, JJK 825 here brings up a very valid point. There is a history of this. There is a court history, which it's actually kind of rare for an officer to lose on something like this. But it has been previously upheld in an appeals court that where a police officer had moved out of the way of an oncoming vehicle, the use of deadly force was not justified. You can't move out of the way and shoot somebody and then say that you were in danger. And, you can sit there, well, the first bullet went through the windshield. The second and third didn't. And he clearly could have moved out of the way because he did. But first of all, you don't know that. And secondly, that's still not a reason to murder somebody. You can't just go murdering people because they're annoying you. All right. Who said anything about MSNBC? Are you talking about because I mentioned somebody was on the Chris Hayes show? Well, she was the one, And anyway, it's MS Now anyway. But that doesn't change reality. Doesn't mean she's not there. She doesn't mean she didn't see it. Didn't mean she didn't say what she said. And it also doesn't mean that he could. It doesn't change what he did. It doesn't change that he moved out of the way. And it doesn't change DHS policy. Just sitting there screaming MSNBC bad doesn't change the facts. Everything that has been going on is just how much white nationalism only want whites here. They can paint it however they want, but at the end of the day, you can't lie to yourself. And that's really what it comes down to. They sit there and they talk about how they're the Christians. They're the Antichrist. Everything they say and do is against Christ. Remember the Alzheimer's Cheeto daddy kidnapped another country's leader so that you'd forget he raped, trafficked, and killed children with Epstein, right? Now we're going to go to war with Denmark over it. Okay, the DOJ policy strictly limits the use of firearms against moving vehicles to specific life-threatening scenarios. Right, Brett. And by the way, welcome. But I was pointing that out earlier. I was reading that both the Department of Justice and Department of Homeland Security, which says when the vehicle itself is being operated in a manner that poses an imminent threat and no other objectively lethal force is authorized when the vehicle itself is being operated in a manner that poses an imminent threat and there no other objectively reasonable defensive option exists, explicitly including moving out of the path of the vehicle. So if you can move out of the path of the vehicle, you are not authorized to use lethal force. He moved out of the path of the vehicle while using lethal force. So he clearly did not need to use lethal force. And so, like you're saying, This is against both DOJ policy and DHS policy. There's no question about it. This is like open and shut book, end of story. Everything else doesn't matter at this point. All your little arguments about what she was trying to do are irrelevant. He could have moved out of the way. He didn't move out of the way. This is about what he did, not what she did. End of story. Zip it up. Let's move on. She interfered with him all day, which is crime. So what? She committed a crime by refusing a refusal to get out of her vehicle. So what? None of that matters. None of those are authorizations to use lethal force. I don't agree with them. I don't think you have any idea what she was doing all day. I don't think that anything Kristi Noem said can be taken to heart, considering she said there was a riot going on when there quite clearly wasn't. She said she's a domestic terrorist when she quite clearly wasn't. She was a legal observer. She wasn't following them and agitating them. She was a legal observer. She had a legal right to be there and observe what was going on. She was allowed to follow them around all day. She was doing her job. She wasn't interfering with them. She was watching them. If her watching them to make sure that they were following the law was interfering with them, then that should tell you something. That should tell you that they felt like they weren't able to break the law with her there, which is why she needs to be there. That's why they need legal observers. So maybe stop, acting like you know something you don't. By the way, you can see across the top banner there, or the banner, the top or the bottom, depending on which screen you're on, there's a banner scrolling across there. I have a voicemail number now. So if you want to call in and leave a voicemail, feel free to go ahead. The only thing I ask is that if you use the voicemail, you just don't do any profanity, because this is a monetized show on YouTube, and I just won't be able to play it. I'll play it as long as it's not as long as it's covered by YouTube's monetization policy. So nothing overtly racist and no swearing, stuff like that, stuff that is going to get me gigged by YouTube. But other than that, say whatever you want. I'm not filtering those any more than I filter your comments. And I definitely filter contradicting or read contradictory comments. So anyway, there you go. 512-980-4061 if you want to call and leave a voicemail. Yeah, he shot her in the face because he's angry racist and a small white pickle do. Protesting in neighborhood watch is not a crime. That's, I was thinking about this today, since, it's the Pun Show and everything. You would think that Donald Trump would like protesters, because he never would have passed his SATs without one. Get it, like protester, because he paid somebody to take his SATs for him. So, like a protester. All right. Maybe that one's terrible. She would driving in the direction away from the, yes. And I agree, she was not driving, she was not trying to kill him. But even if she were, even if every single MAGA talking point about her were right, all of them put together, stacked on top of one another, tied up with a bow and stuck a cherry on top of it, still would not justify what the ICE officer did, which is why I say we need to make it about what the ICE officer did and not what she did. What the ICE officer did was murder. By legal definition, maybe second-degree murder, because I don't think he premeditated it, but certainly it was murder, or at the very least manslaughter. ICE categorically incapable of issuing lawful orders because they are not acting lawfully. I can't read that one out loud, but I think it's a valid point. The U.S. court, okay, so yeah. We got that one. I don't know. I'm sorry. That's like sometimes people like just keep putting the same comments over and over again. So I'm going to stop reading that one if I can not do it. Bottom line, there's a citizen and there's not this one. Sorry. Liberals and Democrats defend criminals and narco-terrorists. Nobody, what does this have to do with narco-terrorism? Like, this is just like, you just scream narco-terrorism every time you're wrong. Was a murder the super soft agent? Was a murder the super soft ICE agent is going to hell? You know what I've been thinking is like a lot. I think maybe some of it is training and some of it is like due to these like mass hirings of ICE agents and like less screening and less training. And, you know, I was thinking about it because this is this is what their problem is with so-called DEI, right? And we'll get into this in a bit. But their whole thing is about DEI and how DEI isn't qualified and they're lowering the standards and, you know, like they're not merit-based anymore and they're just lowering the standards to get their numbers up. So I was thinking we should start calling them DEI hires because there's like they're not qualified to do the job. They're not trained to do the job. The standards are lowered. Anyway, if you like that, let me know. I think it's kind of, you know, a fun little turnabout. Bottom line is there's a citizen and there's a masked ICE agent. And of course, this guy picks the ICE agent. You all know ICE as a private army of racists. There, you can take the seal out of the gravy, but you can't take the gravy out of the seal. The law says she was to exit her vehicle. It doesn't matter. Here, I'll show you. Okay. Law enforcement and correctional officers, the Department of Justice, and this is, I know this is DOJ, not DHS, but they're pretty much identical. When an officer has reasonable belief that the subject of such force poses, this is the use of deadly force, right? And the same thing, I looked at the Department of Homeland Security one, and it says the same thing. So deadly force may not be used solely to prevent the escape of a fleeing suspect. So even if she was breaking the law, and even if, you know, she was disobeying the law to get away from these ICE agents, and she, you know, what she did was illegal, and they gave her legal orders and all of that, even if all of that were true, and it's not, but even if it were, it's not justification for lethal force. So I don't want to like pretend it's okay, or like, I don't want to just concede that she did this thing wrong, but I'm also pointing out doesn't matter. We're talking about what he did, not what she did. He shot her 3 times. We need to talk about what he did. What she did doesn't justify what he did. This is like, are you the type of guy that beats his wife and then says that, you know, well, you should have made dinner tonight? Because that's the essence of what you're arguing here. That his reaction was justified by her action. What would you say if she ran over him and he died? I would say that she was wrong, but she didn't run over him and he didn't die. He moved out of the way while he was killing her. She died and he shot her. So the question is, could he have moved out of the way? Yes. And you want to talk about that one little bump when she apparently initiated based on the momentum of his body's weight. When he struck the car, he was going forward, not backwards. That's how physics works. But he was pulling his gun, you can see it in the video, before she even took the car out of reverse. And in that time that he was pulling his gun, instead of moving in front of the car, he could have moved away from the car. The whole thing is whether or not he could have avoided anybody dying. It was on him. He is the police officer. It is his responsibility to de-escalate the situation, not to escalate it. So what she did and what you think could have hypothetically happened are irrelevant. We're talking about what he did. And what he did is not according to DHS policy. Your hypothetical scenarios are irrelevant. No, she didn't. He did. He just murdered somebody. Yes, I can. How about you read the rest of it? Okay, I've got to move your thing here, your comments, so I can. Okay. If a person in the vehicle is threatening the officer or another person with deadly force by means other than the vehicle. That's what it says. By means other than the vehicle. Do you know what other than the vehicle means? It means not the vehicle. Okay? Just the vehicle by itself, if you can move out of the way of the vehicle, is not grounds for authorization of force. There were 4 confirmed shots. I thought I could only count 3. At least only at most only one of them came through the windshield. And that one appears by all accounts to be, or by my observation, to be fired while his feet, I kind of paused the video and looked at it, and you can see his feet by the front left tire when he fired the gun. So that first bullet that went through the dashboard was fired from the side, like it was from the front and the side, but you don't have to be like directly in front of the car in order to fire a bullet through the windshield. You can be off to the left, you can be off to the right. It's not like you have to be perpendicular. That's one. Number 2, he could have moved out of the way. Still, it is not about what she did. It is about what he did. He just wanted to be a hero and F up. He just give it a rest, lady. No, I'm not going to give it a rest, Tamika. I'm not. I'm not going to just sit there and let ICE run around murdering people. The lady did not cause this. He did. That's what the law is. You can't sit there and scream about the law and following orders and then disregard the law and following orders. Either he has to follow the law or not. This is about what he did, not about what she did. Just testosterone and a weapon and gravy. Should have, could have. No. He didn't follow the law. Again, it's what he did, not what she did. She's not able to defend herself. She's dead. He murdered her. You don't get to vindicate murdering her and then say she found out. What he did was not according to the... How can you people be so obsessed with following the law when it comes to getting out of the car, but not when it comes to putting a bullet into somebody's head? Again, it does not matter. He moved out of the way. He moved out of the way. He moved out of the way. So he could have moved out of the way. We know this because he did move out of the way. He moved out of the way. How many times do I have to say that? And it says, when the vehicle itself is being operated in a manner that poses an imminent threat and no other objectively reasonable defensive option exists, explicitly including moving out of the path of the vehicle. So we know he could have moved out of the path of the vehicle since he did move out of the path of the vehicle. Therefore, authorization for the use of force is not consistent with DHS policy. What part of that are you people struggling with? We don't know if there was a verbal threat. We don't know what she said, but we know there's nothing she said that kept him from being able to move out of the way of the vehicle. It is 100% whether or not she can move out of the way of the vehicle. Okay. Yes, it was. It was explicitly murder, as stated by Department of Homeland Security policy. What do you think that authorization of the use of lethal force policy is for, Patrick? You think it's just like a suggestion? You think it's just like, do it if you want? We don't really mean this. It was absolutely murder. He killed her without authorization for use of lethal force. When you use lethal force in an unauthorized way, what do you call that? Tickling? Hugging? Read clause 2. Yes, I have several times. Clause 2 says that, okay, so this is, you're talking about no other objectively reasonable means of defense appear to exist, which includes moving out of the way of the path of the vehicle. Moving out of the way. What part of that don't you understand? He literally moved out of the way. So we know that's a distinct possibility that he could have done that. What part of that are you struggling with? Okay, and again, we got to just keep going through this over and over again. It's like a cycle. Deadly force may not be used solely to prevent the escape of a fleeing suspect. All right? They can't do it because she was fleeing, and she can't do it unless the only thing that they can do to defend themselves is to shoot her. The only defensive option was to shoot her. If he can move out of the way, and he moved out of the way, then it's not authorized. And again, like as a former Department of Homeland Security person said, if it was so obvious that his life was in danger, why didn't either of the other officers reach for their guns? Right. Like in the time, in the time it took him to draw his gun, he could have actually just moved out of the way, or at the very least, not walked in front of the vehicle. He was pulling his gun while he was walking in front of the vehicle. He walked in front of it. He didn't just eventually move out of the way. He moved in the way. Which is, I've seen so many interviews with various law enforcement officers, including ICE agents, that say that like you're trained not to step in front of a vehicle because that's just escalating the situation. And this is why I talk about DEI hires. Like clearly just a few weeks of training and getting an extra boat of gravy is not enough to make an ICE agent. He moved out of the way. He fired the second and the third shots from the side. So clearly he moved out of the way. And he was not injured. You know who was injured? She was. Well, I don't care what Malcolm X said. What Malcolm X said has zero to do with the fact that he could get out of the way because he did get out of the way. Man, the application for ICE is a QR code, free streaming channels. The course is 4 weeks. And you get a $50,000 signing bonus. Apparently, they've lowered the background check for it. They're DEI hires. That's what they are. You got a bunch of DEI hires. He did get out of the way. He did. He was to the left of the car when he fired the second shot. So he did get out of the way. You can't say he couldn't get out of the way when he got out of the way. We are arguing the first one, he clearly did not need to fire the second and third shots, but he did. He fired a shot point blank into the side of her head through the driver's side window. And if he had been not moved in front of the vehicle, instead of trying to move, instead of trying and pulled his gun, he wouldn't have had to get out of the way. Oh God, no. Not the poor gunman. Keep the knee at 2 miles per hour. Yeah. And if you here, did I have that? This is the other, like, this is so ridiculous. But yes, he moved out of the way. I'm sorry. So tired of stupid. Is this it? Yeah, see how he's like leaning into the car, and the top of him is leaning into the car. That's not what happens when you get hit by a car. The car is heavier than him. Laws of physics matter. He was moving towards the car. He caused the collision, not her. She had backed up literally to get around him and to get around the ICE agents. She was trying to avoid him. He stepped in front of her. Obey, you are a government slave, or else die, because ICE baby. Michael. Okay. This guy does not know what I know exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm quoting DOJ policy and DHS policy. You just saying I don't know what I'm talking about does not change reality. You saying I'm know what I'm talking about doesn't change the laws of physics. It just changes any respect I might be able to have for you. Okay. From 0 to 9. I don't know what is not going. Now Kash Patel is on the job. Well, he's going to keep an eye out. Okay. Oh, they've identified the guy. His name is Jonathan Ross. Anyway. Oh, he was previously dragged 50 yards in a previous incident, leaving him more than 30 stitches. So he didn't learn to get out of the way the first time. Wow, it's all right. I've got comments going nuts here. ICE employment requires flat top haircut, camo, self-important crayon to fill out the application emoji, and bottomless gravy boat. He was called on the ready. Yeah, he did. I mean, like you can see in the video, he while she's like backing up, when hopefully she's like paying attention to what's behind her at that point, he walks in front of the car. I don't even think she knew that he had stepped in front of her when she put it into drive and started moving forward. But all of this is moot. It was his responsibility to avoid a confrontation there. It was not hers. He's the officer. He's the criminal here. He's the one that committed a crime. He committed a crime. She was a legal observer. Do you know what that means? That means she was legally observing. She was not breaking any laws. There were people before these Gravy SEALs, these DEI hires, came up and started telling her to move. Other DEI hires were telling her to move. And then they told her, get out. And so she was being told two things at the same time. She was a legal observer who had every legal right to do what she was doing. Legal observers are people that are certified to be able to observe and watch what's going on to make sure that everything that is happening is legal. She was a lawyer. She had every right to do what she was doing. I do know what DH policy is. I literally, this is DH policy. This is actually from DHS's actual PDF. DHS policy is when the vehicle itself is being operated in a manner that poses an imminent threat and no other objectively reasonable defensive option exists explicitly, including moving out of the path of the vehicle. That is DHS policy. You do not know what DH policy is. You don't know. I do. I would love to go over this frame by. I don't care. It doesn't matter frame by frame. What she did is irrelevant. He could have gotten out of the way. We know this because he did get out of the way. If he could get out of the way, then he's not authorized to use lethal force. Some of them even have criminal records. I think some of them were hired because of their criminal records. Okay, what is wrong with what I'm saying? You're saying that I don't know what ICE policy is. I'm quoting to you what DHS policy is. It seems to me like you're struggling trying to evade reality. ICE is killing citizens. Yes, she did actually have a right. She was a legal observer. All right, I'm getting way behind on comments again. How did I literally did not do that. I just quoted the policy, which says moving out of the path of the vehicle. If you can move out of the path of the vehicle, that's what you should do. He could move out of the path of the vehicle. That he didn't start moving out of the path of the vehicle sooner is not mean that he couldn't have done it. You don't get to move into the path of the vehicle and then blame it on her. You need to move out of the path of the vehicle. He was not doing that. That's on him, not her. It doesn't say that, like, if you didn't do it, it's okay to stand there and empty your gun into somebody's, through somebody's windshield. It says if you can. So even if, like, there was this bump, which he initiated, there was a witness that said he threw himself on the roof of the car to shoot her. But he did not move out of the way. While he was doing that, he could have moved out of the way. Yeah, so now it's support. Yep, see, it's always got to come to just like fake things. You guys cannot accept that you're wrong. That's the problem. That's the problem. You guys can't just say, okay, DHS policy said if you can't get out of the way, if you can get out of the way, you should. And this dead woman is there. No, you've got to like make up stuff about the woman, about her wife, sit there and talk about how she FA'd and FO'd and all of that. Stop it. Accept reality. Now, there is a justification for force. That right now I'm reading from DHS when lethal force is authorized. But including when it's authorized is when it is not authorized. If the only thing he could do, if that were the only option, then it would be okay for him to shoot her. If she were driving at him and firing a gun at him, that would mean that she's threatening deadly force by means other than the vehicle. She was not doing that. If just stepping out of the way, just taking one step out of the way, which was very easy for him to do, could have avoided the whole thing, then that's what he should have done. They had other ICE agents all over the place. If they were really worried about her fleeing, they could have apprehended her a block away. There is absolutely no reason he had to shoot her. He could have just stepped out of the way. What was she doing there? I told you she was a legal observer. She was allowed to observe. And what she was doing there is irrelevant. Like, she could have been down there. She could have been there to whatever reason. Like, what reason would she be there that would allow him to, like, empty his gun into the side of her head? Why is you want to make it about her? I keep saying it's about him. He shot her. What she did is irrelevant. Whether what he did was illegal. What he did was not authorized by lethal use by DHS policy. Okay, again, you're talking about the guy that was. No, I'm talking about the guy that actually shot his gun. And she was not going directly at the guy, she was steering. You could see when he fired the gun, his feet were by the tire. I'm talking about the guy that moved out of the way, the guy that fired through the driver's side window, the second shot. That by then he was out of the way. We know this because he was not in front of the car when he was on the side of the car. Only one person shot. So that if you've seen the still shots of the guy firing through the side of the window, that's the guy I'm talking about. And that's what I mean when I say we know he could have gotten out of the way, because he did get out of the way. You can talk about he got hit by the car, but he was still able to get out of the way without anybody dying. Once he was out of the way, any more gunshots and the first gunshot were all illegal. Hey. Oh, I've been saying your name wrong. It's Episten. Sorry, I've got a little problem with dyslexia. So sometimes, so it's epistemia, epistemia. Doesn't matter if she had a right to do what she did. It doesn't justify what he did. It doesn't matter if he's the one that pulled the trigger. We're talking about what he did, not what she did. Obey your overlords. Well, stand up and protect your murderers. ACAB. I know I'm supposed to know what ACAB means. What does ACAB mean? Okay. Oh, all cops are bastards. That's it. No legal right to block the road. She wasn't blocking the road, but it still doesn't matter. You cannot. Blocking the road is not lethal force. Is not grounds for lethal force. You can't shoot somebody for blocking the road. I'm not living in a world where make believe your truth and start believing the actual truth. I'm reading you actual policy. You cannot shoot somebody for trying to flee a scene. You can't shoot somebody unless you can avoid shooting them. Can't avoid shooting them. That's basically what it comes down to. You can't shoot somebody for using their vehicle as a weapon if you can move out of the way. And since he moved out of the way, and we know he moved out of the way because there are pictures and video of him not in the way. So therefore, we know he could move out of the way because he did move out of the way. No. Dude, or dudette, whichever you are. I don't know if that's you in the picture or not. I'm not trying to play the moral high ground. I'm just pointing out the law. I'm just pointing out to the facts. He could move out of the way because he did move out of the way. And if he could move out of the way, it's not an authorization for the use of lethal force. Oh, did we get our first trans mention? Did I miss that? Everybody take a drink. He shot her 3 times. At least one time was point blank in the face. I mean, you can see that on the video. Oh, okay, you're agreeing with me. She refused to leave. She refused to get out. And then she was trying to leave. None of that, none of this is relevant. Because none of this authorizes lethal use of force. He could have gotten out of the way. That's it. And we know this because he did. So what? So what? He didn't. He shot her after he was hit. So obviously he could still get out of the way. And he did. So that's not, getting a boo-boo is not reason to use lethal force. And again, he threw himself at the car. But even if it was because she hit him, that does not vindicate lethal use of force. Whatever, that doesn't vindicate lethal use of force. When was the last time you stepped on a gas pedal when someone was standing in front of your vehicle? That doesn't authorize lethal use of force. When is the last time you were stupid enough to stand in front of a vehicle to stop it from leaving? Your president trafficked, raped, and murdered little girls. You had less than 1 second. He had enough time to draw his gun and fire it. How does it take any less time to just take a step? He was able to step into the vehicle or towards the vehicle in that time. Why couldn't he have stepped away from the vehicle? Why did he position himself in front of the vehicle in the first place? So the amount of time that he spent pulling his gun and drawing her, he could have gotten out of the way. And again, he did get out of the way while he was murdering her. No. The legal observer is an actual thing. Look it up. Like that, I love it when you guys don't know something and so you just assume it's made up. When you know so little about anything. You don't know the difference between a circle and a triangle. And if I told you that circles don't have angles, you would probably argue with me and call me a libtard. That doesn't matter. That's not authorization for use of lethal force. Maga says, obey, don't question, stay asleep, don't look up. Unless Joe Biden wins an election. Oh, he's going to cry. Oh, he's going to cry. Are you like 7? Are you 7? I think you're 7. Okay, Kitty, when? No, the ICE agent had to go to the... I don't care. He could go to the hospital. I mean, he didn't have to go to the hospital. They took him to the hospital because of the optics. What I know is that he was standing just fine when he was planting his feet and emptying his gun into her head. And he wasn't in front of the car as he discharged his firearm repeatedly. Obey your government. We will take all right. So anyway, I'm spending way more time. I was kind of hoping that people would understand that even if all your little justifications here are true, which they aren't, but even if they were, what he did was still inconsistent with DOJ policy. It was inconsistent with DHS policy, and it is inconsistent with legal precedent, and is therefore not a justification for murdering her. He murdered her, according to DHS policy, according to DOJ policy, and even according to qualified immunity standards. Kirk founded Toilet Point, toilet paper on gun control and COVID restrictions. Both founders dead. Gun violence and karma is a bitch. All right. So now the next thing I want to talk about is this whole thing with Venezuela and the War Powers Act. Would love to get your thoughts on this. As I've said before, I think both sides have expanded the War Powers Act over time, and it's an issue that I have with both sides. I think what happened in 2001, there was the authorization for the use of military force for Al-Qaeda and for the Taliban, okay? And then immediately, and that happened like 3 days after 9/11. I didn't have a problem with that. And it was an authorization for use of military force. It wasn't actually a declaration of war. There never was a declaration of war with Iraq, and it was all under the pretense that Al Qaeda had something to do with Iraq, and it never did. So right away, George W. Bush lied, and now even like Republicans try to pretend they weren't Republicans then, and that they never were on that side, and they try to blame Democrats for it or something like that. But anyway, he went and he lied to Congress about all this evidence that Saddam Hussein was a threat and had all these, chemical weapons and everything, and was like, a week and a half away from becoming nuclear power, and we had to go in and stop him. And it was actually just all bogus. There's something called it was a white paper called the Project for a New American Century that was written in the 90s, and it was signed by people like Donald Rumsfeld. And it was all like, if we have it was all they were mad that in the first Gulf War, we didn't go in and get the oil. They said we should have followed through and just gone in and stolen their oil. And so then they said, if we get another opportunity, if there's a terrorist attack on a Pearl Harbor type event, was the specific language they used in that. And they said, if there's a Pearl Harbor like event, we should use that to go after Saddam Hussein and invade Iraq. And so then they did that. They used that as a justification to go after Iraq. They used 9/11 as a justification to go after Iraq. And so right away, this authorization for the use of force in 2001 was already violated. And they went through this pretext of getting UN's approval. UN didn't approve, but they went in anyway. And they killed a whole bunch of people. They ruined an entire generation of Iraqis, and they sent us to war for 20 years. In the course of that, actual Al Qaeda kind of had a division in them, and then ISIS became a rival to Al Qaeda, and ISIS was so Obama wanted to go after ISIS, and everybody in Congress, everybody wanted to go after ISIS, but Obama actually asked for a separate use of force initially. People don't understand this, but he initially asked for a separate use of force. The Republicans Congress didn't want to give that to him, not because they didn't want him to use force, but because they wanted to give him more authorization than what he was requesting. And so they just said, let's go ahead and dovetail this into the 2001 authorization. And he's like, okay. And then they came up with this interpretation of associated forces. ISIS was associated force of Al Qaeda. Now, I think that he should have just told them, no, I don't want to abuse my powers. I don't want to make it so that the next person can come along and expand it even more. I need specific use of force. And so he didn't do that, and I fault him for that. And then Trump came along, and Trump expanded that war even further, and that definition and even further. Biden came along. Biden also and broadened it and authorized bombings in new territories. So every single president since the authorization of the use of force, including Trump in both terms, has been gradually expanding this. And even the whole War Powers Act was reaction to presidents gradually expanding it more and more. It happened under Eisenhower and Truman. It happened under JFK, who got us into Vietnam. It happened under LBJ, who expanded Vietnam, and Nixon, who expanded it even more. It happened under Reagan, who, with the whole Iran-Contra thing, and it happened under, with what was it? Reagan invaded Grenada. And then you had Bush 1 with the invasion of Panama. He got congressional authorization for the first Gulf War, but then he said we didn't need it. Clinton expanded the whole thing with his he violated the authorization, or with the War Powers Act, by extending Kosovo beyond 60 days. So every single president, with the exception of Carter, since Roosevelt and the declaration of World War II, every single president except for Carter has done something to expand the executive branch's use of force. And we need to rein that in. The Constitution, even I think the War Powers Act is unconstitutional because it gives the president power he's not supposed to have. And I think that we're supposed to have Congress declare war, because I think that I think our congressmen actually have to have something on the line. It shouldn't be, well, we should vote to rein in power. It should be, no, we have to vote to give power, because that's something you have to go back and answer to your constituents for. Like, you have to go and tell your constituents why their sons and daughters, or why they have to go to war. You can't just sit there and say, well, we're not going to limit, Trump's power. I didn't vote against it. It's not the same thing as I voted for it. And we need to come back to, if you want to have a war, you have to declare war, instead of this whole idea of military action. And, where we're not declaring war, but we're doing the same things that war does. We've gone into Venezuela. We bombed their capital city. We took out their power. We kidnapped their president. We've taken over control of the country. We're taking their resources away from them, their oil. We're doing all of this. All of this are things that you would associate with war. But we're all doing this all under the pretext that it's not war. And we're talking about invading Greenland or involving the military. We're talking about dismantling NATO, all without Congress being involved. So I think, now they're talking about whether they're going to restrict Donald Trump in Venezuela with no further military action. I think what they need to do is they need to have a vote on whether or not we're at war with Venezuela. And if we're not at war with Venezuela, do what the War Powers Act says and have him pull out. We can't just be in another undeclared war for the next 20 years. So anyway, they're going to have this vote. I think they actually passed something in the Senate. Like Rand Paul voted, like I said, this is one thing I actually agree with Rand Paul on. And there were, what's her name from Maine, like a few of them. And there were 52 votes to limit him from doing anything more without congressional approval. But I think what they need to do is just somebody needs to say, we're either at war or we're not, instead of trying to have this both ways thing. We need to go back to where, if Congress wants to declare war, we declare war. And if we're not declaring war, we're not at war. Stop with these hidden wars. Stop with undeclared wars. Vietnam was a war. Korea was a war. Afghanistan was a war. Iraq was a war. What we did in Venezuela is an act of war. Just because we don't call it war doesn't mean it's not war. All right. So let me go through. Did Obama ask Congress? Were you here? Did Obama ask Congress to take out Obama? Yes, he did. I talked about that, but I also pointed out that Obama was wrong because he didn't take no for an answer. And in the wrong way. Like, they told him no because they wanted to do more, and he should have done more. They should have, or they should have told, they should have declared war. Obama should have just said, "Fine, you don't want me going after Gaddafi, I won't. You don't want me going after ISIS, I won't." He should have just not done anything, and then Republicans would have to go and defend their constituents why they were okay with letting ISIS run around doing whatever they wanted, or why they were okay with Gaddafi doing whatever they wanted. He should have let them own their own thing. That's the way that the whole balance of powers is supposed to work. Make people own their policy. So I do think that Obama should have done more in terms of demanding authorization from Congress for both Gaddafi and for ISIS. So I don't know what you think. Like, this does not mean I'm inconsistent. I would ask you, are you consistent? Because I agree with you. Obama should have done more. Do you think Trump should do more in terms of getting authorization from Congress? Or are you just using Gaddafi as a talking point? Bill Clinton should go to jail. He gave us the greatest economy on the planet, lowered the deficit, and gave us a $3 billion surplus. We hate you, Bill Clinton. Yeah, and then George W. Bush just drove that straight into the ground. Of course you do. I don't know what that means. I'm sorry. I don't know, because I don't know what the preposition is modifying. But I think I'm clear here in that I have pointed out that both Democrats and Republicans have been wrong on this. And that this, to me, this is a Congress thing and a president thing. Like, we're supposed to have a separation of powers. We're supposed to have a balance of powers. There is in the Constitution, things were written the way they were for reasons. And when we take the power to declare war away from Congress by just calling it something else and bestowing it on one person, we are putting ourselves in a situation we should never be in, and which the founding fathers did not want us in. The founding fathers didn't want one person to have authority over when we use the military. That's why they put the whole thing about Congress declaring war in the Constitution, and why one person has authority over how to use the military, but Congress has the authority to determine when we use the military. There's nothing in the Article 2 does not say the president gets to decide when we use it. It says he decides how we use it. Biden put it, but that's not. First of all, I pointed out that Biden also expanded war powers, and I have an issue with that. This is not about Maduro. This is about the president of the United States and 75-year history of gradually taking power from the Congress. It has nothing to do with Maduro. Not everything needs to be a defense of Donald Trump. Venezuela oil is shit, and Biden made the plans and had the arrest warrant for Maduro wrote up. Yeah, but you can talk about what Biden did. Biden didn't. Biden is not the one. I don't know if it's true that Biden made the plans and had the arrest warrant for Maduro written up. He was indicted in 2020, and I know MAGAs get confused about who was president in 2020, but the indictment came under Trump 1, first of all. Secondly, Biden did not ever tell the military to go in and take out the power and kidnap him and bring him back here. Number 3, yes, Venezuelan oil is poop. And I think this is one of those things, like, I have people say, well, why would Trump do that? That would be stupid. And it's like, you're actually asking me why Trump would do something stupid? Like, everything, like, Trump does a lot of stupid things. And I'm not even talking, like, things that are objectively stupid, no matter what your politics are. Like taking unhealthy amounts of aspirin because he doesn't want thick blood pumping through his heart. I don't know. I am best friends with someone from there, a lawyer, and he is very happy. That's not here nor there. Like you can talk about like whether we should be in Venezuela. I'm not talking about that. I am talking about whether or not Congress should declare war on Venezuela if we're going to be there. This is what I'm talking about. This has nothing to do with whether we should be there. It's who determines whether we should be there. Congress is pussyfooting. They're trying to have it both ways. They're trying to say we need to limit when Trump can be there, but not limit when Trump can be there. He's talking about we're going to be there for an indefinite period of time. I'm saying when we do acts of war, Congress should declare war. That doesn't have anything to do with Joe Biden. That doesn't have anything to do with Donald Trump. That has to do with Congress. Congress needs to exercise its power and say either we're going to declare war or we're not. Even the War Powers Act was not like you get to go and do war unless Congress stops you within 60 days. That's not what that is. That says if there is some kind of emergency that comes up that you have to do something, Congress has 60 days to decide whether or not we're going to still be there or not. I like Obama, yes. I don't know. I don't love any politician. I mean, I tend to not attach my heart to politicians. I think that if you really study history, then you're just going to be disappointed. Every single president has disappointing things. There are things that disappoint me about Lincoln. There are things that disappoint me about FDR. There are things that disappoint me about Clinton. There are things that disappoint me about Obama. There are things that disappoint me about JFK. All my favorite presidents have disappointed me. Thomas Jefferson disappoints me. Like, I am not like one of these people that thinks my side good, your side bad type things. I've talked about that twice now. So you're saying learn from... Yes. I am saying learn from history. I don't know what that means. Yeah. What does the celebration of the people have to do with the legality of the action? Exactly. I mean, and even in some ways, I'm not even just talking about the legality of the action. I'm talking about our Constitution. I am talking about the authorization. I feel like every time Congress has a chance to stand up and say, no, this is too much power to be in the hands of one person, they run from it because they don't want to be seen as being weak and not authorize military action. And two, they don't want to be seen as weak and authorizing military action. Or they don't want to expose themselves to authorizing military action. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's so much easier to just not have a vote for war than to not vote for war or to vote for war. It's just easier to not have a vote. It's just easier to close your eyes and pretend it's not happening. What I'm talking about is Congress needs to actually have a debate on war before we get into it. And that has consistently let the president of the United States, whether that was under Roosevelt or whether that was under Truman or Eisenhower or JFK or LBJ or Richard Nixon or Ronald Reagan or George H.W. Bush or Bill Clinton or George W. Bush or Barack Obama or Donald Trump or Joe Biden or Donald Trump again. We keep doing the same thing, and it's time to stop doing it. Congress needs to declare war if we're going to war. And we can't just sit there and not call it war and pretend it's not when what we're doing is clearly acts of war. This is now the start of Civil War 2025. Bleeps, shots have been fired. And I like your typo there. Must have been thinking about Donald Trump. And the RFT has begun. American Civil War is clearly underway. I'm a MAGA. I don't question no government. Nope. I trust him with my money and my daughter. Okay, y'all don't understand legal. Trump is enforcing the Monroe Doctrine. No, he's not. He's absolutely not. The Monroe Doctrine said that, never mind. He's not in, you don't know what the Monroe Doctrine is, and Donald Trump doesn't know what the Monroe Doctrine is. There's no such thing as a Monroe Doctrine. And the Monroe Doctrine also is not like some sort of legal thing. Like Russia and China and Venezuela are not bound by the Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine was Monroe said no more colonial action. It never said that Portugal wasn't allowed to have an alliance with Brazil or to have trade with Brazil. It was never about that. That's all nonsense. You have no idea what the Monroe Doctrine was. Don't talk about the Monroe Doctrine until you actually at least go read the Wikipedia article on it. And he said that Venezuelans are extremely... I'm sure some of them are. I'm also sure all of them aren't. I'm also fairly positive that none of them are like... not that the majority of them are not super duper excited about the United States running the country indefinitely. I mean, there might be a bit of a jubilation that Maduro isn't in charge anymore, and nobody, you never heard me say a positive thing about Maduro, and you never will. But this whole false dichotomy is another thing, and I'm not talking about Maduro or Venezuela. I'm talking about the United States declaring war. We are not at war. We are at war. We're just not calling it a war. When you take over a country, run the country, we sent our military into the country, we took out its leader, we took out its power, now we're taking it over, we're deciding who's running it, and we're taking their oil, according to Donald Trump. All of those things are war. I don't care if you don't call them war, they are war. You know how they say a rose by any other name will smell as sweet? Well, call a war whatever you want. It's still stinky. Okay. Why does that matter? The legality of the action, Russians. This guy should be in the street with... Okay, but, you know, I'm not. Hey, I feel like, yeah, everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. I'm not a good singer. Then you still don't know what the Monroe Doctrine is. Yeah, you said that already. Okay. Well, what you're saying is quite clearly you don't know what the Monroe Doctrine is. I'm quite familiar with Monroe. Okay, the only people mad at... I have not brought up Maduro at all. I haven't brought up Maduro at all. I'm a Republican and I hate Democrats because they fix the economy and get us out of our recessions. Republicans put us in recessions and give us inflations. Hey, Kitty, how you doing, Rainbow? I really am starting to fear what our country is becoming. This place gets more hospital every day on daily, regardless of whether you're a citizen. And it's just like I think about that that poem about the Nazis. First they came for the socialists, then they came for this, and then they came and then nobody was left for me. I feel like that's where we're at. It's just like whether, if you're a Democrat, if you're a liberal, if you're a leftist, if you're gay, if you're trans, if you're, um, you know, uh, undocumented migrant, if you're a documented migrant. Now, I mean, it's like it was all, oh, we don't care about, it's not about immigration, it's about illegal immigration until Donald Trump starts dismantling people that are legal immigrants by taking away their legal status. And so it's becoming about everybody. It's just like MAGA versus everybody. So, hey, Clip, thank you for your contribution to the cause there. Do I own a gun? I do not own a gun. I don't feel I need one. I've never had the need to defend my life against anybody. I know that if you own a gun, you're more likely to shoot, like you're more likely to be a victim of it than you are to use it to defend yourself. I don't have problems with people owning guns. People are allowed to own guns if they want. I just prefer not to. I think if you're a law-abiding citizens and you want to own a gun, go for it. All right, so I'm going to skip down. Learning gun safety, even if you don't own a gun, is always a good idea. No, I was in the military. I know how to use a gun. I actually got my marksmanship ribbon, but I just don't want one in my house. I'm not going to get into a big thing about the point about the Monroe Doctrine is that nobody is bound by it. It has no legal standing on anybody. It was just like Monroe said, it's like if you're like, if you want to, you're the biggest kid on the block, right? And then the kid from another block comes over and he wants to fight Bobby, and Bobby's your friend. And so you say, if you want to get to Bobby, you got to go through me first. Well, the United States probably wasn't in a position to really do it, but they were basically like, if you want to get to them, you got to go through us first. They were like, we're responsible for the defense of the whole Western Hemisphere. No more colonializing. You can't go and colonialize them. All right. Then in 1906, there was the Roosevelt corollary, where there was some kind of dispute between, can't remember who it was, like Honduras maybe and Spain. I can't remember which countries, but one of the countries in South America was indebted to a European country. And then there was there was some rumors of war that happened, and then the United States said, we'll take care of it. We'll make sure they pay, and they did, and blah blah. And so that was So then, but then Roosevelt used that as an excuse to basically colonialize South America, which it was originally supposed to be so that it wouldn't be any colonialized anymore, but it became America was colonializing it. And like 8 years earlier, we had run out of, land going to the West, and Manifest Destiny had kind of started sputtering out. So we're like, well, where are we going to go now? Where are we going to? And so we started looking to South America. We started looking to Hawaii. We started looking to Alaska. Now we're looking to Greenland, I guess. But anyway, Monroe Doctrine does not mean we get to decide that we own other continents or other land and then just take it over. I bet people have to follow the law in Greenland. No, but you're just using it to justify illegal action. But China wanting trade with Venezuela is not justification of unilateral military action. No one is mad. This dude is gone. We're angry. There wasn't a process fault. And with me, it's not, it's even absent Venezuela. It's a pattern that has happened, that Congress just constantly relinquishes its power to declare war to the executive branch. And this is not what the founders wanted. That's not what the framers wanted. And it was wise of them to give Congress the power to declare war. What we do now is we keep having wars without declaring it. So Congress never has to vote for it. They never have to go back to their constituents and defend why they voted for war. What I'm saying is, if we're going to put our men and women in the military, which I used to be one of, then congressmen should have to go back to their constituents and justify it. And senators should have to go back to their constituents and justify it. We have not had a declaration of war since World War II. We haven't even had a vote on a declaration of war since World War II. Do you want to tell me we haven't had a war since 1942? We've had all kinds of wars. We just don't call them wars. No, if we're gonna have a war, let's call it a war, and let's have a declaration of war so that Congress has to go and defend their votes. And we'll see if they stay congressmen. Judging from the text chats on YouTube, I think it's a safe statement to say that everyone's a terrible person. They are so bloody thirsty in defense of his action. The ones, it's just like Donald Trump, no matter what Donald Trump does, they will like reflexively defend it. I asked what legally justifies the invasion, and you said the Monroe Doctrine. He even read the comment on screen. No, Zach, China wants to exploit. Okay, if China wants to exploit Venezuela, okay, so let's just take you in good faith here, Brute. Okay, let's say China wants to exploit Venezuela with loans that could never be paid back so they can take their collateral. Let's say that's true. Then we should, and you think that is grounds for Trump to do what he is doing, to stop that from happening. Then what should happen is Trump should go to Congress and say, I want to declare war with Venezuela for this reason. And then Congress should have a vote on it. And then we should go conquer Venezuela and do it. Have a vote on it. That's all I'm saying. But the thing is, that would never pass a vote. And would never pass a vote because everybody knows if they tried to vote based on that, they would lose their seat. And that's why we need to have votes on wars, because we need to make representatives and senators accountable when we have a war. It's a very serious thing. And since it's a very serious thing, there has to be serious consequences if the people don't like it, which includes senators and representatives losing their jobs. Do you see what I'm saying? I don't even think it matters. That's why I said with ISIS, Obama should have said, no, Congress, you need to go and have this vote. I think they should have given him authorization, but Obama should have said, I demand you give me authorization, because that's what the founding fathers wanted. They wanted the Congress to determine when we use our military. How it's used is up to the president. That's Article 2. But Article 1 is when we use it. I hope, I know I've said that before, but I don't know if I get heard sometimes. I think people are too busy typing their comments to argue and not listen to what I'm saying. I am talking about what the Constitution says. The Constitution gives Congress the power to declare war. And we can dilly-dally about the definition of war, but we know what war is. When you're going to another country, when you're sending to your military to another country to kill other people and to potentially be killed, and you're taking over that country and you're taking their resources and you're running that country, that's war. I don't care if you don't call it war. It's still war. And if you're going to declare war on a country, Congress should be the one to declare it. Say it out loud, Brute. I'm a little liar who can't be bothered to read my talking points. I don't mean this negatively. I do think even what a person gives and takes is still subject to each person. Do you agree? There. Oh, you're talking to Cravensworth. All right. So thank you for having this conversation. This is what we need. Also, there's an actual conversation going on. I love the fact that I was planning on moving back to Minnesota once I graduate. I was hoping it would be safe for me since trans people are accepted there and I can get the care I need. I hope so, buddy. Where in Minnesota? I used to live in Rochester and I used to live in East Grand Forks. Well, I went to high school in East Grand Forks. I actually lived in Grand Forks. And I used to live in the Twin Cities. Those people are really disgusting. The stupidly blind obedience and bloodlust are a real turnoff. It's been a long day. I'm not in the mood for this. Maybe tomorrow. Okay, Brett. If you're still here, thanks for hanging out. Who said it was war and who said that war was declared? Nobody said war was declared, which is why I say we should declare war. Not declaring war does not mean it's not war. When you go into another country and you kill people with your military and you take their leader, whether you think they're authorized or not, you take out their power, you take over running that country and start taking its resources, that's war. Like, just not calling it war because war was never declared, that's my problem with the whole thing. Is, oh, well, war wasn't declared, therefore it's not war. But the actual things you're doing are acts of war. We are going to war. We're just not calling it war. If we're going to go to war, instead of just not calling it war, let's call it war. Let's call a spade and follow the Constitution, instead of just pretending it's not war and fighting one that's not declared. As a veteran, I'll tell you that as a veteran, I'll tell you, I know exactly what I'm talking about. But are they? It doesn't matter if they are or not. We're not talking about them. We're talking about us. We did this thing. We made an act of war. We did an act of war. We are at war. Whether they like it or not, whether they asked us for it, they didn't ask us for it. But we still have to have war. That's what the Constitution says. Why do you only like the Constitution when you don't like? Does the Constitution, does Article 1 give Congress the power to declare war or not? Is there somewhere in Article 2 that says, well, if there's this other thing that we don't call war, it's okay for the president to decide it? No, there's not. When we use the military is up to Congress. How we use the military is up to the president. That is what the framers decided. I don't care what you said, and like, I'm sorry, I doubt you've ever been in the military, but I have been. I marched in a parade for the president of the United States when I was in the military. My work wife was a cop. She says this is murder. You're a pog. Tell me different. I don't know what a pog is. I lived in Marshall, then Ballatin, then Mankato for a good while. Been to Mankato. That's actually, if I remember correctly, that is. Oh wait, that's over by Minneapolis, right? Is that right? Where's Mankato? Is that no? Yeah, it's like an hour and a half from Rochester. That's what I thought. It's a pretty town. Never been to Belton or Marshall. I don't like it here. The people are, yeah. Missouri used to be a little more moderate, but now it's all become like MAGA. Okay. You should know better. The president does. No, he does need permission. That's the whole point of the Constitution. Every president needs permission, and I've been saying, like as I've been saying, it's been gradually eroding that for the last 75 years. Because it's not because Congress didn't say. Like if Venezuela agrees and the people there agree and the people in our military agree, then it shouldn't be hard to get Congress to agree. My issue is not whether we're there or not. My issue is whether we're there or not without congressional authorization. If everybody wants us there, why are you so afraid of asking Congress to approve it? No, I did not get a medal for that. It was 19 I want to say 1989. It was like on the anniversary of when Italy was freed from, like, kind of broke, like after they like turned on Mussolini and joined with the Allies against Germany. And there was like this big commemoration of some sort of battle that happened. And George Bush came there and he was speaking in Rome. And like he spoke and the president of Italy spoke. And there were two people from every base or every squadron or whatever, like all the different military forces. There's like Navy bases there and Army bases there and Air Force bases there. Anyway, two from each squadron and from each base. So anyway, I was one of the people from my squadron that got to go there. And he walked around and introduced himself to us afterwards. It was kind of cool. I got to shake hands with the president. When, even if we don't have MOSs in the Air Force, we have AFSC, I think they were called. Anyway, it was a 906 medical administration. It was kind of cool because I was in charge of Aerovac while I was there, and as a result, I knew when all the flights, like when there was space available on a flight. So if I wanted to go to like Germany for a weekend, I could. Like I'd be like, okay, yep, I know that there's space available on this flight, and if there's space available, you could fly. We didn't even have a flight line there. We just used the Brindisi Airport, so we didn't even have to pay $10. I could go anywhere in Europe for free as long as there was space available. I think I would go through there. I had a friend in Iowa in Des Moines, and so I used to be like one of my stopping points on the way from Minneapolis to Des Moines. Uh, 2008 precedent says defense is not valid when an officer puts themselves in unreasonable danger. That's interesting. So going back to the other conversation, but again, it's like I just feel like that whole thing just comes down to the basic fact that DHS policy says what he did was murder, so it's murder. And it's not about what she did, it's about what he did. Personally, my problem with it is this is a blatant act of imperialism, and the ideology has to go away with American invention. No, and I agree with that too. Like, but that's also why I think if you have to go and like, if you're going to go to war, you have to sell the war. You have to tell people this is why it's important to us. And I don't think that the American people as a whole would get behind a war with Venezuela or a war with Greenland. And that's why the founding fathers gave that power to Congress, because in giving that power to Congress, they actually gave that power to the people. They effectively gave the people a say so in such things. FDR, like if FDR had no trouble getting popular support for World War II, and honestly, the first Gulf War, George Bush had a tremendous amount of support for that. And in terms of getting popular support against Al Qaeda and the Taliban, George W. Bush didn't have a lot of problems. He was actually, I think, at his peak of popularity. He had like 80% approval ratings right after 9/11. When our nation gets attacked, the nation rallies. But all these other wars would have never like Congress would have been out on its butt if it ever had to go and declare war on Vietnam, and had to go back and defend its position to the voters. Congress would have been out on its butt with Grenada. Maybe Reagan is still popular, but Congress gets swapped out real fast, because those are the lower you are on the totem pole, the more responsibility you bear for those things. And that's why they have to vote for it. But they don't. That's why they avoid voting for it. POG means piece of garbage. I'm solutions-based human. I would rather live in a perfect world, but that's not possible, unfortunately. So I try and learn what I can to provide value to this country. Oh, I like that. Congress is neutered. Congress is self-neutered. Congress is sitting there with a big pair of shears, cutting off its own nuts and blaming the Democrats. Fine, let Donald Trump sell that to Congress, and let Congress sell that to the American people. I participated in the 1979 White House Easter egg hunt when my father was part of the Joint Chiefs. Hey, cool. My younger brother got a present from Jimmy Carter. I mean, it was a form letter. We didn't know it at the time. I am an electrical engineer and master electrician that has spent the last few decades building, designing factories, schools, hospitals. That's what I can do, if that makes sense. That's a cool thing to do. I think the world needs all the engineers it can get, because how else would engines be able to hear? Ballotine is a cozy, quiet town. My grandma lived there for a long time before moving down there. It's a small town, but it's nice. Marshall is bigger and more attractive than Ballotine, but still nice. Where is that? Like, what part of Minnesota? I've never heard of either one. Minnesota has like 1,000 lakes and like 5 small towns for every lake. Was it Monte Casino? I don't know when. I must enjoy having these conversations to see where other people's minds are. I feel like it is important, and I appreciate our conversation. I appreciate you guys being able to have a good conversation here. All right. But I'm not quite sure what's going on with it. China exposure is one. Okay, sell that to Congress. Have Congress declare war. I'm not going to argue with whether or not we should be in war with Venezuela. I'm just arguing Congress's power is to declare when we have war with Venezuela. And what we're doing right now is effectively war. When we are invading other countries, taking them over, stealing their resources, and running them, that's a war. That it's not declared war is my problem with it. Like, if you want to get in, like, if you want to get into, like, this is such a weird cyclical argument. No, it's not a war because we haven't declared war, but that's my whole point. We're doing things that are war. We're occupying another country. We're running that country. We're taking its oil. We have the U.S. Navy right there. We're telling, the puppet president that we've installed, that's apparently taking a backseat to Viceroy Rubio. We're telling it how to run itself. We're saying that we're going to run the oil. Donald Trump just today said that this is an indefinite thing that's going to go on for years. How is that not war? He has a concept of a plan. Actually, I think he even said the word concept again. No, we already conquered it. We conquered it. When you start taking its oil and running it, you just conquered it. Calling it not a war does not mean it's not a war. Anyway, my whole point about all of this is Congress should declare war. They shouldn't just vote on whether or not Donald Trump should, have to come back before he takes new action. No. They should say right now, they should determine we're either at war with Venezuela or we're not. You want to say we're not at war? Fine, have Congress vote and say we're not at war. But there needs to be a vote on whether or not we're at war. And if we're not at war, we should get out of there. And if we are at war, then have the vote. But stop having this thing where we're over there, our military's over there, we're running the country, we're taking their resources, but we're not at war. That's my problem with it. So when you say, who are we at war with? Nobody. Then why is our military over there? Midas Touch reporting that the money made from Venezuela oil will not go to Treasury. Instead, it will go to offshore account controlled by Trump. I haven't been this shocked since this big fiery ball appeared in the sky at sunrise. I was talking about this the day it happened. There's something called Blue Water, which put in a bid on Citgo for $10 billion. And then Trump media has these, I can't remember what they're called. Anyway, Trump media basically has control over Blue Water now through Devin Nunes. And it's only a matter of time before Blue Water has control over Argentina's oil. By the way, Donald Trump owns 41.2% of Trump media. Howard, they always say you're brainwashed if you don't agree with Trump and don't like everything Trump says is gospel or something. Then you're brainwashed. None of you know what you're talking about using words. I don't know who you're talking to. Have you heard of punitive expedition? No, I don't know what punitive expedition is. Let me look it up. Okay, a punitive expedition is a military journey undertaken to punish a political entity or any group of people outside the border or the punishing state of union. Of the punishing state of union is usually undertaken in response to perceived disobedient or morally wrong behavior by miscreants as a revenge or corrective action, or to apply strong diplomatic pressure. So are you... Anyway, I don't know if you're using that as some sort of excuse for what Donald Trump is doing in Venezuela. I don't care what you call it. Calling it something other than war doesn't change the fact that we went to another country and conquered it, and now we're stealing its resources, and we're saying that we're running it. I mean, all of those things are true. Did Donald Trump say we're running Venezuela? I'm just quoting. Did Donald Trump lie when he said we're running Venezuela? Did Donald Trump lie when he said that we're taking the oil this time? I'm just quoting what Donald Trump said. Did Donald Trump lie when he said that our military went in there in this flawless execution and took out their leader, took out their power? What am I lying about? What am I wrong about? As someone who can form full sentences, you're the moron here. We're not taking their oil. We don't own the oil rights. We don't. That's a misunderstanding. I think one precipitated by Donald Trump. And no, we don't own the oil rights. We don't. We don't. What happened is there was a contract with U.S. oil companies and Venezuelan oil company. Then Venezuela nationalized their oil, and they ended that contract, and then they had to pay like billions of dollars on that. But that is not us owning the oil. Venezuela still has its own oil rights. It still has oil. That's not how international law works. And we went to an international court and everything. So no, we don't own their oil. We don't own their oil rights. Everyone should watch. That's actually, yeah, that's a spot on comment right there. The Constitution states exactly that. No argument. That about Congress declares war. You mean? I hope. If you ever see a political pro stream, it'll make you get listened to. I'm not actually. I've wanted to be who I am now since I was 4 years old. I'm not brainwashed. Oh, he's talking about you're brainwashed into thinking that you're trans. It's like amazing how people know what you think, Randy. Or Randy. I went from Rainbow Kitty to Randy Rainbow. It's amazing how people know what you want. That like have never met you and understand you better than you know yourself. In the 1920s, Chevron researched and explored for oil in Venezuela, invested billions. Yeah, and all of that is they are an owed money, and that's all true. But it's not theirs. It's not theirs, and it's not ours. Look it up. Like actually, look it up. Go to a fact check or an AI and ask: does the United States have the rights to Venezuela's oil? They did not steal it from us. They nationalized. Midas Touch is fake news and anything that I don't want to hear is fake news. How many military members of the United States are currently in doesn't matter. Who's running Venezuela? According to Donald Trump, who is running Venezuela? Do we have the Navy stationed right off the coast? Have we suggested that the military will get involved if the puppet president doesn't go along with what we say? Have we even suggested putting in the actual person who won the Democratic election there in 2024? So the point is, if we aren't at war with them, then pull the Navy out, pull our control out, let them have control over their own country. But we're in this thing that we're at war, but we're not calling it war. We're in this thing where we're telling Venezuela what they can do. We're taking their oil. We have our military embargoing them. We are taking their oil tankers with our military, but because we don't have boots on the ground, it's not war. No, I'm sorry. If somebody were to claim one of our oil tankers, if somebody were to not embargo, what's the word I'm looking for? Blockade the United States. If somebody were to come and put a blockade around the United States, would we consider that an act of war? You don't get to do acts of war and not call it acts of war. If somebody came and kidnapped the president of the United States and the first lady, regardless of whether it was Trump or Biden, would we consider it an act of war? Citgo is on. Yeah, no, it's a private company, but I mean, it was a private company that's been nationalized, and it's actually being bought. Like anyway, come back once you've actually learned something. You are talking points, and none of this is relevant. We don't own their oil. Did Thomas? I don't know. We were the ones that, so actually, we weren't the ones that built the oil structure. American corporations paid for it. We didn't build it. Venezuelans built it. They just paid for it. No, we can't. As a matter of international law, we can't. We sued in international court. In international court, they legally decided that Venezuela owed those companies that money. We didn't sue. Chevron sued. And so there was a litigation between a U.S. company and Venezuela that they lost, and Venezuela had to pay. That does not mean the oil belongs to America. And here's the other thing about this oil. This is super. It's called heavy crude, and it's really crappy oil, basically, and it needs to be refined more. First of all the infrastructure is just rotted, and we have to redo all the infrastructure. And it's in a country where right now it's not that secure, it's not that safe, and you've got all of this pipes that need to be refitted. You need to update everything. It's going to cost billions of dollars to do that. And it's going to take years, and it's going to take all kinds of security to do it, to get this crappy oil out. Then it has to be refined. And so it's going to cost like $70 to $80 a barrel to get it, just to get it out of the ground and refine it. And right now, oil is like $50 or $60 a barrel. So you're actually losing money. Once you get to where you can even get it out of the ground and refine it, it's going to be costing more money to do that than you can sell it for. It's crappy oil. And everybody else in the world, we might want to pretend global warming isn't real and not make a move to go towards green energy. Everybody else in the world is. So it's not like oil is going to become a better investment in 20 years. So U.S. oil companies know that. U.S. oil companies don't want to go and spend a bunch of money on this. They're telling Trump, no, we don't want that oil. It's bad oil. Like all of that, like even if what you were saying is true and it's not true, it's still a bad investment. And not only that, where was I going? Anyway, it's crappy oil. We don't want it. The American business. So because it's going to cost all this money, Donald Trump is sitting there talking about U.S. taxpayers fronting the oil companies for this. We don't have enough money to give poor kids food and pay for school lunches, but all of a sudden now we've got billions of dollars to give U.S. oil companies to steal oil out of the ground from Venezuela. That's crappy oil that we can sell for a loss. Like, why? Again, and this is where I keep coming back. You want to make that case to Congress? And you want to declare war? Go make that case. Have that vote. See how you do in the 2026 elections. Who's the transphobe? I know, right? How they think they know me better than myself. They don't even know me. And I've known me my whole life. I haven't always liked me, but I've always known me. Okay. Breaking: U.S. officials are reportedly discussing offering lump sum payments of $10,000 to $100,000 per person to Greenlanders as part of an effort to encourage secession from Denmark and a potential move towards joining the United States. What a joke. We're like this. Why is he so obsessed with Denmark or with Greenland? I don't think we need Greenland for our national security. I saw this clip where some clown was talking about, how America has spilt more blood for Greenland than Denmark ever has. As though we've ever I don't know. Maybe there's like some great war for Greenland that I don't know about, but I don't remember anybody dying. I don't remember any blood being spilled, any American blood being spilled for Denmark. Yes, China is definitely moving towards green energy. Uh, China, China built more green energy last year than we have built. Period. I don't know how to answer that question because I don't know how you would receive the answer. Like, I would call myself pretty much if anything, I would say that I am a liberal institutionalist. Like, I believe in the power of government and I believe it should be used for the people. I believe that it can be abused to hurt the people the way it currently is. So I think that the institutions of government need to be protected and they need to be kept clean. And I don't think that's what's happening right now. But I still believe that the institution is the best way to effectuate change and to effectuate aid to people that have need. Sorry if that doesn't fit on left-right grounds, but if the invasion and takeover was illegal, how to for the Republicans? Who's a liberal for Republicans? I don't know. We have refineries in Texas that were built for that specific. We still have to get it out of the ground, and it still costs money to refine it. And it's still, and it still need to be updated. I'm just telling you, the people that own those refineries in Texas are telling Donald Trump he doesn't want that oil. They don't want that oil. But remember how mad the MAGAs are about illegals getting money and benefits. Right. But we're ready to just pump money into worthlessness because corporations will get more money. The U.S. occupied Greenland on Franklin Roosevelt's order when Germany invaded Poland, World War II. So no blood was shed. Did Germany invade Greenland? So like, I don't see anything about like any blood being shed there. From all the Viagra keeping up his huge bleep. Sorry, kind of vulgar. Are you talking about the the overcompensator? Has to talk about his size. I'll delete that one. Ditto. I am not okay with giving someone in Greenland 100,000 of my tax dollars. Yeah, we can give them $100,000, but by gosh, don't give a child a lunch. Can you give an example where the institution affected change in a positive manner? Yes, I can. Can give you lots of them. Medicaid, Social Security, Department of Education, all the things that you think did not change. ACA. There's lots and lots of ways. I just don't believe all the slander about it. That's all. Germany occupied Denmark during World War II. Okay. So, all right. We're at about a 2-hour mark. I still haven't gone over today's show. Planned content. We've just been getting distracted by the other stuff. So I'm going to take a quick intermission here. When I come back, we will talk about the DEI and all of that fun stuff. All right, I'm back. See if I still have anybody here. Hey, there's still people here. Good. So, it's so weird how people fixate on what other people do with their lives. It's like, what? We're like, how does it affect somebody else? How somebody else lives their life? I've never met anybody that was actually hurt by a trans person existing. All I know is feeling boo boos. All right. So let me, I'm going to clean up my little studio here. Not my actual physical studio. That would just be me and my recliner. All right. So I am going to go to my, oh, where did it go? Hang on. All right. Hang on. See if I got any voicemails real quick. Nope, no voicemails. Sorry for all the. All right, let's just go to Claude. Okay. Open up my artifacts. So anything happened while I was talking? Okay. Okay, here we go. We got a dashboard. By the way, I saw my buddy, but I haven't seen him since. Where is my cat? My cat is wandering around in the kitchen right now, waiting for my wife. My wife went for her walk, and he always paces about the kitchen, waiting for her to get back when she goes. He doesn't like it when one of us leaves. Okay, so I've got this dashboard I made on just the whole topic of systemic racism. And I feel like this is the place to start. If we want to talk about DEI and we want to talk about being woke or whatever, we've got to start with systemic racism. And systemic racism is a real thing. I know that some people don't like to admit that it's there, or they try to deny it, or they try to think that since we got rid of slavery, it's impossible, or since we got, the Voting Rights Act passed, it's impossible. And I think that maybe some people don't understand what systemic racism is. And maybe some people just don't want to admit what it is. Systemic racism is not words for, it's not code word for you should feel guilty for being white. So, all right. So let's start going into this. Need to refocus myself here. Systemic racism in America, understanding how policies, practice is, and institutional norms create and perpetuate racial inequalities regardless of individual intent. The data doesn't lie. So what is systemic racism? Systemic racism to me is that there is a system that has where it's a system where some races don't have the same advantages as other races. There is a difference between races systemically. So if you go and you look at certain things, if you're a black person in America, you are at a disadvantage systemically in a number of different ways that overlap one another. And this overlapping actually reinforces something so that it's systemic. Like people will say, well, black people are arrested more because they have more crimes. And then it's like, but they're arrested more because there's more police presence there. And there's more police presence there because, they are in a higher poverty level, and there's higher crime and higher poverty levels, and so on and so forth. And you end up like in this circle where you can, like, people try and extract one thing out of it, and they want to say, well, it's because of that. but that's also part of the system. That's what we need to understand about systemic racism. And it's not an intention. It's not somebody sitting there making it happen or designing it to happen. It's happened over 250 years and longer than that even, but because slavery existed before the country did. And so we have this system of racism in our country. And that's not a okay, Epstein. Systemic racism is why liberation is the only answer. So anyway, there's a number of different ways I want to discuss how we have systemic racism here. These are some of the different areas. The first one I want to discuss is criminal justice system, wrongful convictions. I see all the time these arrest rates, right? And they'll talk about 50% of arrests are Black people. And they'll try to prove that means that Black people are 50% more likely to do crimes. And so then that justifies everything else. But Black Americans represent 13.6% of the U.S. population, but account for 53% of all exonerations since 1989. This isn't about crime rates. It's about innocent people being wrongly arrested, convicted, and imprisoned. A lot of the people that get arrested aren't guilty of anything. So using high arrest rates to vindicate keeping arresting people when those high arrest rates also result in higher exoneration rates means Black people are not only more likely to get arrested, they are more likely to get arrested wrongly. They're more likely to get convicted wrongly. We make up Blacks make up 13.6% of the population, 53% of the exonerations. They're 7 times more likely to be wrongly convicted. So that's a sign of systemic racism. They are systemically at a disadvantage. You are more, and this is not like, I know some people are always like FAFO. Well, this is not an FAFO thing. This is a DFO, still FA thing. So by crime type, innocent Black people are 7.5 times more times to be wrongly convicted of murder. Innocent Black people are 8 times more likely to be wrongly convicted of sexual assault. Innocent Black people, and I want to emphasize the word innocent Black people, are 19 times more likely to be wrongly convicted of drug crimes, despite Black and white people using illegal drugs at similar rates. It's just enforced more against Black people, and it's enforced against innocent Black people. The whole way that the judicial system operates is not nearly as fair as we like to pretend it is. Police misconduct appears 50% more frequently in cases of Black exonerees. Black people spend an average of 3 times longer in prison before exoneration for murder, and 4 years longer for sexual assault. So they're more likely to be wrongly convicted, and when they are convicted, they get longer sentences, even when the rest of the history is the same or similar. This evidence literally proves innocent Black people are more likely to be arrested, convicted, and imprisoned. So that's one aspect of systemic racism. Okay, and then people are like, well, what about poverty and stuff? Okay, what about housing, the appraisal gap? Studies have documented cases where the exact same home was appraised at vastly different values based on the perceived race of the owner. So there was this famous example of Paul Austin and Tanisha Tate, who had a home in Tanisha Tate Austin's home in Marin County, California. And they were selling their house, and they had somebody come out and appraise it at $1.15 million. And, I think they had a few people come out. Then they had some other people come out, but they had white friends pose as the owners. and they got an average of 1.15 million offers when they, the black couple, were selling the house. When their white friends were selling the house, they got a $500,000, $1.64 million more offered on that house. So this is a systemic problem. Even the ability to build wealth and, like based on your home value and stuff like that, your house, you won't get as much for your house if you're a black person than if you're a white person. Homes in majority black neighborhoods are valued 21 to 23% below what their valuations would be in non-black neighborhoods. When you even account for like crime rates and all of that, and you're talking about the same type of home, same number of bedrooms, same square footage, same backyard. Only difference is who your neighbors, what race your neighbors are, then it sells for less. Location, location, location. Well, depends. Are you around black people? Are you around white people? If you're around white people, your house sells for more money. Homes in majority black neighborhoods are 1.7 to 1.9 times more likely to be appraised below the contract price. So this amounts to approximately $156 billion in lost equity nationwide for black homeowners. 12.5% of homes in black neighborhoods are appraised below contract price versus 7.4% in white neighborhoods. So this is really bad, right? We talk about things. Somebody was talking about like there's no disparity, there's no wealth stuff recently, and there is. You even if you work and work hard and save up and do everything and get a house that's worth $1 million, you still are a victim. And they're going to try and take advantage of you, and your house is worth $500,000 than if you were a white person. This is not a theory. Actually happened. Wealth gap. And so then it's like, okay, it goes from generation to generation too. How much money are you able to inherit? Like this family that had the $1 million home, their kids will inherit some money from them based on what their estate is, right? But their estate is going to be worth less because they're black, even though it's the house that same estate would be worth more money if they were white. How inherited wealth compounds over generations. So black families 10% receive inheritances. White families about 30% receive inheritances. And then how much you receive. Average black family receives $100,000. Average white family receives $195,000. So that's like the home you put a down payment on or the business you start. All of that is affected by how much inheritance you might get. The next generation, inheritance increased wealth by 100,000 plus. Next generation increased house wealth by 4,000. So it's like the black families actually do better with inherited wealth than the white families. I'm not sure what that means. Anyway, nearly 8 times less wealth. So this creates a cyclical nature. And this is with inheritance. White households are 2.8 times more likely to inherit anything at all. Reclining official policy until 1968. Redlining. Can't read. Redlining official policy until 1968. You know what redlining was, right? Like you literally got less money by policy if you lived in if black people moved into your neighborhood. Systemically denied black families mortgages in certain neighborhoods, preventing generational wealth building. You can't pass down wealth. You are legally prevented from accumulating. So if you can't buy a house in a community where that house is going to appreciate in value, how are you going to build that wealth? That's how most white families build wealth, is through their home. But black families for generations were denied that chance. And still unofficially, it's very that the ripple effects of that continue. This means today's wealth gap directly reflects yesterday's explicit racism, even if every individual actor today were perfectly unbiased. And we just established they're not. But this is what I talk about systemic. It's not an intentional thing. It's not everybody that's involved is like being racist, and there's not necessarily any racist laws or anything like that. But it's just the system has created a market where the people that own homes, black families that own homes, have less value than families that own white homes. Thank you. I agree with that. I think am anybody I don't know if anybody's paying attention to what I'm talking about right now. It's funny. I think I'm running out of steam. You know what? I think I'll just go through this tomorrow. I'm actually I'm just like, man. Hey, Huggy Bear. So I'm gonna take this up tomorrow. I'm actually kind of suddenly hit a wall with my long COVID and stuff. I think I'm out of steam for the day. And I'm almost out of viewers too, which means it's not all that entertaining anymore. Ever since I stopped talking about the ICE terrorist attack. So thank you, Kitty. Oh, I got 2 kitties on my stream, and I got 1 kitty on the floor asking for my attention. So anyway, oh wait, somebody did say something about this. I think the housing was a great example. Healthcare is also a good one. It's just sad. Anyway, it's sad how it's all overlaps and everything, and like nobody seems to care or notice. Seems like 2000, everybody, or 2020, everybody was all about it, and then I'm gonna be an ally, and then everybody forgot. Anyway, I think I'm just gonna sign off for the day. Gonna end early today. And appreciate you guys, especially the kitties. And I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.